Some American towns sell houses for under $10,000. Real homes, not ruins. But the catch never makes the listing. No jobs, no hospitals, shrinking populations, and sometimes no easy way out. The price is low because everything else already left. Before you call it a deal, ask yourself what you're actually buying into. Number 15, Cairo, Illinois. Welcome to Cairo, Illinois, a place that on paper should have been one of the richest towns in America. It sits right where the Ohio River meets the Mississippi, two of the most powerful trade routes on the continent, meeting right here. Shipping, industry, commerce. This place had every geographic advantage, and for a while, it worked brilliantly. Back in the early 1900s, over 15,000 people lived here. Businesses lined the streets. Hotels were full. Money was moving. Cairo was a real breathing city with a future that looked inevitable. Then everything stopped. Racial tension tore the community apart for decades. Businesses closed, families left, investment dried up completely. Today, fewer than 2,000 people remain. And most of what's left sits empty. You can find homes here for the price of a used car, sometimes even less than that. So what's the catch? There are barely any jobs. Most stores are gone. The schools are underfunded. Even basic services feel stretched. One local described it this way: "It's not dangerous, just empty." And that's worse. Because buying a cheap house is easy, but living in a place where everything around you is disappearing, that's a different kind of cost entirely. Number 14, East St. Louis, Illinois. Now let's talk about a place where the homes are cheap, but the living conditions come with a completely different kind of price tag. Welcome to East St. Louis. You can buy a house here for around $20,000, which sounds absolutely insane, especially when you realize it's sitting right across the river from the St. Louis skyline. $1 million view. A $20,000 house? So why isn't everyone moving here? Because this isn't just a struggling town. It's what happens when an entire community gets systematically left behind for generations. Entire neighborhoods are filled with abandoned homes. Some streets lack reliable lighting. Infrastructure that most Americans take for granted, roads, water, sanitation, becomes a daily negotiation here. This isn't some remote location in the middle of nowhere. It's right next to a major U.S. city, visible from the highway. And yet, life here feels completely disconnected from all of that. Factories shut down, jobs disappeared, and the investment that was supposed to fix things never really reached the people who actually live there. So, yeah, the houses are cheap, but the trade-off is real. Limited opportunity, higher daily risk, and a gap between what you see on a listing and what you actually experience living there. Number 13, Allenville, Missouri. Now imagine buying a house for $15,000 and realizing the problem isn't the house. It's that the town barely even functions. Welcome to Allenville, Missouri. Population? Around 30 people. That's not a small town. That's a group chat. You'll find listings here for under $10,000. At that price, it almost feels like a life hack until you look closer. There's no proper sewer system. Electricity can be unreliable. The roads are rough in ways that aren't charming. They're just rough. Jobs? Basically non-existent. Businesses? Almost none. And here's the part that really stings. This town didn't just decline naturally. It got left behind deliberately. Flooding hit the area again and again. Funding was promised. Government plans were drawn up. Relocation programs were proposed. But every time help was supposed to arrive, it went somewhere else. And Allenville just kept shrinking. Today, it feels less like a town and more like something slowly fading out of existence. Like a word someone forgot how to spell. Number 12, Whitehall, Alabama. Now let's talk about a place where the houses are cheap, but the real problem is something you'd never see coming. Welcome to Whitehall, Alabama. Homes here for under $20,000. Quiet, rural, peaceful looking. But underneath that surface, there's a serious infrastructure crisis that most people outside the state have never heard about. In parts of Whitehall and the surrounding region, there's no proper sewage system. Raw waste in yards in 2024. Not in a developing country, not somewhere remote and inaccessible, right here in the United States. The health consequences have been documented. Researchers and journalists have written about it, and still, full resolution hasn't come. That's when cheap housing stops being a quirky statistic and starts being a window into something much deeper. Because when basic infrastructure fails, everything else fails with it. Healthcare becomes harder to access. Property values stagnate. People with options leave, and the people left behind adapt. Cheap doesn't always mean affordable living. Sometimes it means surviving in conditions that shouldn't exist here. Number 11, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Now imagine buying a house for $25,000 in a town that used to genuinely thrive and then just stopped. Welcome to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. At one point, this was a functioning city with real economic momentum. Factories, mills, a port, jobs that built careers, not just paychecks. Then the jobs disappeared, and when they left, so did the businesses. And when the businesses left, so did the tax base. And when the tax base collapsed, so did the services. Today, homes are incredibly cheap, but entire blocks are empty. Storefronts are boarded up. The population has dropped significantly from its peak. Pine Bluff hasn't given up, though. There are people there who love it and are fighting for it. But here's the honest reality. Owning a cheap house in a place still searching for its next chapter means your investment is tied to a story that hasn't been written yet. That might be exciting if you're a developer with deep pockets. If you're someone just looking for an affordable place to live and build a life, it's a gamble. Number 10, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Let's flip the perspective for a moment. What if the house is cheap, but the history is what's haunting it? Welcome to Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Homes here can go for $20,000 to $30,000. And at first glance, it actually looks livable, even attractive. Mountains, architecture from another era, quiet streets with real character. But this town has been swallowed by disaster more than once. The Great Flood of 1889 killed over 2,000 people. More floods followed. Then the steel industry collapsed. Each time, Johnstown tried to rebuild. Each time, recovery was harder. Today it's still standing, which is genuinely remarkable, but it never fully got back to where it was. The population is a fraction of what it once was. Economic momentum never fully returned. So you're not buying into catastrophe. You're buying into a place that's been treading water for decades and hasn't quite found the shore. Number 9, Gary, Indiana. If you want to understand what happens when an entire city's identity disappears overnight, look at Gary. Homes here can be found for $20,000 to $35,000, sometimes lower. Gary was built for steel. Everything about it, its design, its workforce, its culture, was engineered around the mills. When the steel industry collapsed, Gary didn't just lose jobs, it lost its reason for being. Population dropped from over 170,000 to under 70,000. Entire neighborhoods were abandoned. Buildings that once held thousands of workers became ruins. Today, Gary is famous for two things, being Michael Jackson's birthplace and being one of the most visible examples of urban deindustrialization in the country. There are people investing in Gary right now. There's real potential if the city can find its next identity. But buying in means betting on a turnaround that's been coming soon for 40 years. Number 8, Ajo, Arizona. Now imagine a place where nothing seems obviously wrong, but people still don't stay. Welcome to Ajo, Arizona. Low prices, desert scenery, quiet streets. On the surface, it looks like a hidden gem just waiting to be discovered, but something feels off when you dig in. The copper mine that built the town closed in 1985. Just like that, the entire economic foundation evaporated. And unlike manufacturing cities that had decades of gradual decline, Ajo felt it almost overnight. The population fell. Services thinned out. Young people left for opportunity. What remains is beautiful in a melancholy sort of way. Spanish colonial revival architecture, big desert skies, genuine community among the people who stayed. But jobs are extremely limited. The nearest major city is hours away. Some people move here intentionally. Artists, retirees, people craving radical quiet. For them, it works. For everyone else, the isolation has a cost that compounds slowly until one day it becomes the whole point. Number 7, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Now imagine a place where the danger isn't crime or poverty or decay, it's the ground itself. Welcome to Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town built over a coal seam that caught fire in 1962. The fire spread underground. It's still burning today. Sinkholes appeared. Carbon monoxide seeped up through the ground. Roads cracked open. The state condemned the properties, bought out most residents, and demolished nearly every building. Today, Centralia has fewer than 10 permanent residents. The streets are still there, the road signs are still there, but the houses, the church, the community, gone. You can't really buy a house in Centralia because there are almost no houses left. But it belongs on this list because it represents the ultimate version of what happens when the land itself turns on a town. And it's a reminder, sometimes cheap isn't just a red flag. Sometimes it's a literal warning sign coming up through the floor. Number 6, Camden, New Jersey. Now imagine a place that got the investment and still struggled. Welcome to Camden, New Jersey. Billions of dollars in development have flowed into this city. New buildings, new projects, real money from real sources with real intentions. And yet Camden still ranks among the most economically distressed cities in the country. Homes can be found here for $20,000 to $40,000. Right across the river from Philadelphia, minutes from Center City. The proximity sounds like an opportunity. The reality is more complicated. Investment tends to cluster in certain areas while surrounding neighborhoods stay the same. New construction rises, old blocks stay empty. Progress exists, it's just unevenly distributed. Buying here means buying into that gap and hoping the upswing eventually reaches your street. Number 5, Selma, Alabama. Now imagine a house for $15,000 in a place where the history is enormous and the present is exhausting. Welcome to Selma, Alabama. The name alone carries weight. This is where some of the most significant moments of the civil rights movement unfolded. The Edmund Pettus Bridge, Bloody Sunday, history that changed the country. But Selma today is struggling in ways that feel disconnected from its legacy. Limited jobs, aging infrastructure, underfunded schools and services, a population that has declined sharply over decades. The homes are cheap, but the everyday effort to live there, to access health care, to find work, to get a quality education for your kids, is genuinely higher than the price suggests. There are people in Selma working incredibly hard to change that story, but as a buyer, you need to know what you're walking into. Number 4, Flint, Michigan. Some cities on this list suffered slowly. Flint suffered in front of the entire world. Homes here can be found for $20,000 to $40,000, and yes, the water crisis is exactly what you're thinking of. Flint's water infrastructure was compromised in 2014. What followed was one of the most high-profile public health failures in modern American history. Lead poisoning, federal emergency declarations, years of bottled water distribution. The pipes have been largely replaced since then. Water quality has improved significantly. But the damage to trust in the city, in the government, in the idea that things are fixed lingers. Flint also lost its auto industry foundation decades earlier. The water crisis hit a city that was already down. It's not a lost cause. There are real people rebuilding real things there. But cheap housing in Flint comes with baggage that is both visible and invisible. Number 3, McDowell County, West Virginia. Now let's go somewhere that feels like it exists outside of time. McDowell County, West Virginia. At its peak, this was coal country. Real money, real industry. Tens of thousands of workers. Today, it has one of the lowest median household incomes in the entire United States, one of the highest poverty rates, one of the lowest life expectancies. Homes here can sell for under $20,000, sometimes under $10,000. And physically, the land is stunning. Mountains, rivers, natural beauty that would be worth millions somewhere else. But the jobs never came back after coal. The infrastructure never got rebuilt. The brain drain never reversed. Entire communities exist here in a kind of suspended state between what they were and what they haven't figured out how to become. Number 2, Detroit, Michigan. Certain neighborhoods. Detroit gets talked about so much that people have started tuning it out, but let's be specific. In certain neighborhoods of Detroit, you can still find homes listed under $15,000. In a major American city, with an airport, with professional sports teams, with a functioning downtown that's genuinely revitalized. The contradiction is real because Detroit's comeback is real, and so is its ongoing crisis, depending entirely on which zip code you're standing in. Some blocks have been fully reclaimed. New homeowners, renovations, community gardens, young people who chose Detroit intentionally. Other blocks are still waiting. Buying cheap in Detroit isn't necessarily a mistake. People have done it successfully. But you need to know exactly which Detroit you're buying into, because there are multiple cities sharing one name. Number 1, East St. Louis, Illinois, revisited. And now, the one that started this whole list, East St. Louis. We came back here because it deserves a full look, not just a statistic, but as a symbol of everything this list is really about. This isn't hidden, this isn't obscure. It's right there across the river from a gleaming skyline, visible to anyone driving through, and yet houses here sit for $10,000 or less. Not because no one noticed, because everyone noticed and kept driving. That's the real lesson of every town on this list. Houses don't get this cheap by accident. The market isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as designed. While demand disappears, price follows. And demand disappears when jobs leave, when infrastructure fails, when trust erodes, when people run out of reasons to stay. Houses don't get this cheap by accident. When jobs leave, infrastructure fails, and people run out of reasons to stay, the price is just the market telling the truth. So the real question was never, would you buy a house for $10,000? It's, do you understand why it's $10,000? Because the only difference between a smart move and the most expensive mistake of your life is knowing the full story before you sign.